The Empire's overconfidence in the vastness of the galaxy. There was no power greater than the Zalarian Empire. For centuries, they had conquered countless planets, wiping out any who dared challenge them. The Empire's fleets were the mightiest in the universe, their armies unstoppable, their leaders ruthless. They had conquered planet after planet, and their grip on the galaxy seemed unshakable. Their strength was unmatched, and their enemies had learned to fear them. The Zalarians ruled with an iron fist. Their warships, massive and indestructible, sailed through the stars, terrorizing all who crossed their path. Entire civilizations had crumbled beneath their relentless onslaught. No one had been able to stop them. Their empire stretched across countless systems, and their name was whispered in fear across the galaxy. However, a whisper of something new began to spread, though no one took it seriously at first. A human fleet had been spotted in the outer rim. The Terrans, once considered a primitive race, were building something, a ship unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The Zalarians scoffed at the reports. The humans are weak, they thought. Their ships are outdated, their technology primitive. They have nothing to challenge us. Empress Zalira, the powerful and ruthless ruler of the Zalarian Empire, sat in her grand chamber, staring out into the starry expanse. Her empire had never faced a threat this small, this insignificant. She smiled to herself, confident in the power of her forces. "No one can challenge us," she muttered under her breath, a sense of superiority settling in her chest. Her generals, standing nearby, shared the same belief. They had crushed every race they encountered, and humanity would be no different. Reports had come in about the Terran ship. It was large, heavily armed, and built for war. But the Zalarian commanders brushed it off. They believed it was just another attempt by the humans to appear powerful. "Let them come," one general sneered. "They will learn quickly that they cannot defeat the might of the Zalarian Empire." Despite the warnings from a few cautious officers, the Empire moved forward with its plans. The Zalarians launched their massive fleet towards the Terran colonies. The Empire's warships were equipped with the latest technology, their weapons capable of destroying entire planets. They believed the Terrans stood no chance. After all, humanity had never been known for its military might, and the Zalarians had crushed larger forces than this with ease. As the Zalarian fleet made its way to the Terran system, they encountered no resistance. The Terrans had not yet built their own defenses, and the Empire's ships swept through the stars, leaving destruction in their wake. The news of the Empire's arrival was met with panic across the Terran colonies. The people were terrified, unsure of how to defend themselves. But one thing was certain: the Terrans could not win against such a powerful foe. Back on the Zalarian flagship, Empress Zalira watched as her fleet advanced. Her eyes glinted with the excitement of victory. She knew this would be just another easy conquest. No one could challenge the Zalarian Empire, not even the Terrans. She turned to her generals, who stood beside her, awaiting her orders. "We will destroy them," she declared with a fierce smile. "Their civilization will fall, and the Terran people will learn what it means to defy the Zalarian Empire." However, as they approached the Terran homeworld, something strange happened. A signal, faint and distant, appeared on their scanners. It was a ship, a large one, moving towards them. The Zalarians were puzzled. "A Terran ship?" a commander asked, incredulous. "They have a battleship." Empress Zalira raised an eyebrow. "Impossible," she muttered. "This must be a mistake." The ship on the scanners wasn't like any other Terran vessel they had encountered. It was massive, far larger than any human ship they had ever seen. It was heavily armored, its weapons systems visible even from a distance. The ship was a gleaming monument to human engineering, standing defiantly against the Zalarian fleet. This was no ordinary vessel. This was a Terran battleship. For the first time in centuries, the Zalarians felt something they had never known before: uncertainty. The Terran ship moved toward them, its engines glowing with power. It was a clear challenge, a message from humanity itself. "Send out a communication," Empress Zalira ordered, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "Let's see what these Terrans have to say." A message from the Terran battleship came through, its words simple and direct. "This is the Terran Battleship Vanguard. We are here to protect humanity. Turn back now or face the consequences." The Zalarians laughed. "Protect humanity." One of the generals scoffed. "This ship is nothing. We will crush them like we have crushed every other race before them." But even as the generals mocked the Terrans, something about the ship didn't sit right with them. There was a feeling in the air, a shift, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. For the first time in history, the Zalarians were faced with an unknown. The Terrans were no longer just an insignificant race. They had something that could make the might of the Zalarian Empire hesitate. Empress Zalira clenched her fists. "Ready the fleet," she commanded. "We will show these Terrans what happens when they defy the might of the Zalarian Empire." As the Zalarian fleet prepared to engage, the Vanguard waited, its engines humming with anticipation. The battle was about to begin, and neither side knew just how much it would change the galaxy. The Terran battleship, small and seemingly outmatched, had just thrown down the gauntlet. And in that moment, everything was about to change. Asterisk, the first strike, the vast emptiness of space, was interrupted by the sudden, unyielding hum of engines as the Terran battleship Vanguard powered towards the heart of the Zalarian fleet. The massive ship was a sight to behold, its sleek, dark hull glistening under the distant light of the stars. Its weapon systems were visible, menacing, and yet there was something about it that radiated an air of quiet confidence. Humanity was no longer the underdog. This ship symbolized their rise, a powerful message that echoed across the galaxy. "We will not go quietly." On the Zalarian flagship, Empress Zalira's eyes narrowed as the Vanguard came into full view on the holographic map. "This is madness," she muttered. "How dare they send a single ship to challenge us?" Her fingers tightened around the armrest of her throne. The entire fleet had been mobilized to crush the Terrans, but now they were facing something they had never expected: a human ship standing firm against them. Zalira's general, a battle-hardened officer named Corrin, looked at the readings. "The Terran ship is heavily armed. It's unlike anything we've encountered," he said, his voice betraying an unfamiliar tension. The Zalarian forces had fought many species, but never had they faced a threat from humans like this. A wave of doubt rippled through the ranks. "Impossible," Zalira hissed. "The humans must have somehow stolen our technology, but no matter, we'll destroy them." She turned to her command crew. "All ships, prepare for battle. Do not underestimate them. Destroy the Vanguard at once." The Zalarian fleet surged forward, their warships cutting through the darkness with terrifying speed. They had the numbers, the firepower, and centuries of experience. They were sure of victory. Yet, as the two forces drew closer, something unexpected happened. The Terran battleship Vanguard shifted tactics. It didn't wait for the Zalarians to strike first. Instead, the ship fired one shot, then another. The bright blasts of energy cut through the darkness, their force crackling in the emptiness of space. The energy bolt struck the first wave of Zalarian ships, sending them spiraling into destruction. The vanguard was faster, sharper, and far more precise than the Zalarians had anticipated. Corran, standing at the tactical console, gaped in disbelief. "They've breached our shields," he reported, his voice tense. "How is that even possible?" "Focus," Zalira snapped. "Prepare to retaliate." The Zalarian fleet unleashed a barrage of fire in retaliation, massive beams of energy pouring from their ships. The vanguard evaded most of the shots, its advanced maneuvering systems allowing it to glide and dodge with almost supernatural agility. The human crew, led by Captain Elias Darnell, worked in perfect synchrony, responding to every threat with precision. Captain Darnell stood at the helm of the vanguard, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. His hands moved swiftly, commanding his crew through the chaos. The ship rocked with each impact from enemy fire, but Darnell didn't flinch. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. His mind raced through every possible scenario, calculating each move with the accuracy of a master strategist. "Get us closer," Darnell ordered. "Target their lead ship and fire everything we've got." The vanguard surged forward, closing the gap between itself and the Zalarian flagship. As the Terran Battleship's cannons roared to life, the first blast hit the Zalarian ship with a thunderous crack. The shield around the flagship flared, then flickered, failing under the intense energy. The next strike tore through the enemy ship's hull, causing a massive explosion. Debris flew into space, marking the beginning of a battle that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Empress Zalira's face turned pale as she watched her flagship take hit after hit. "How are they doing this?" she whispered in disbelief. "How can they match us blow for blow?" Corran, his eyes wide with shock, turned to the Empress. "Their technology is advanced. We underestimated them." "Not anymore," Zalira growled. "We will annihilate them. Prepare for a full assault." But even as the Zalarians reloaded their weapons and prepared for the next attack, the Terran Battleship was already on the move. The vanguard executed a flawless, evasive maneuver, darting between enemy ships and unleashing deadly fire. The battle was unfolding in ways the Zalarians had never imagined, and the initial shock of the Terran assault was taking its toll on their fleet. A dozen Zalarian warships were now engaged in a high-speed dogfight with the vanguard, but humanity's ship was far more nimble. The Empire's vessels, large and heavy, struggled to keep up with the unpredictable movements of the Terran battleship. Each moment brought a new wave of destruction. The Zalarians, once certain of their victory, now found themselves scrambling to protect their forces from the relentless assault on the battlefield. The sound of exploding ships reverberated through space. Every impact, every shot fired, was a testament to the skill and determination of the Terran crew. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their right to exist in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. Empress Zalira clenched her fists. "This will not be the end," she muttered under her breath. "We will not let a single Terran ship defeat us." But deep down, she knew this battle was far from over. The vanguard had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Terran battleship had delivered the first striker strike that echoed across the galaxy. The war was now far more complicated than the Zalarians had ever anticipated. The Terrans had shown they could fight back, and they were not going to stop until they had claimed their victory. Asterisk the tipping point. The battle had raged for hours, and the void of space had become a deadly theater of destruction. The fleet, once brimming with confidence, now found itself on the defensive. its ships scattered and battered by the relentless precision of the Terran vanguard. Empress Zalira watched helplessly from her flagship as the once mighty fleet, the pride of her empire, slowly crumbled under the assault in the heart of the vanguard. Captain Elias Darnell stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the chaotic battlefield. The ship was taking hits, but every crew member was holding their ground. He knew that this moment would be pivotal, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The Zalarians had believed that they were untouchable, but now they were discovering the power of a determined humanity. It was a reminder that even the most powerful empires could be brought down by those who refused to bow before them. "Hold steady," Darnell ordered, his voice calm and collected. "We're not finished yet. We need to finish what we started." The crew responded with renewed vigor. The vanguard had taken some damage, but it was still a force to be reckoned with. The Terran ship weaved through the enemy fleet with unmatched speed and agility, its weapons firing in perfect synchronization. Each shot was calculated, each strike more devastating than the last. But even as the Terran crew pushed forward, they knew the fight was far from over. The Zalarians were regrouping, and they would not go down without a fight. Captain, incoming transmission from the Zalarian flagship, Lieutenant Barnes reported, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. Darnell nodded, signaling for the communication to be played. The holographic screen flickered to life, revealing Empress Zalira's cold, calculating face. "You've made a grave mistake." "Terran," Zalira's voice crackled through the speakers. "You may have inflicted damage on my fleet, but you will not win. You're outnumbered, and your ship is no match for the full might of the Zalarian Empire. Surrender now, and I will spare your lives." Darnell's lips curled into a grim smile. "Surrender? You've underestimated us from the beginning, Empress. We're just getting started." Zalira's face twisted in fury. "Then you will face the consequences." The transmission cut off abruptly, and Darnell turned to his crew. "Prepare for the next phase. We need to break their formation before they can launch their full assault." The vanguard dove back into the fray, its guns blazing as it moved toward the heart of the Zalarian fleet. But Zalira wasn't one to back down. She ordered her fleet to regroup and concentrate their firepower on the Terran ship. Desperate to overwhelm it with sheer force. "Launch the dreadnoughts," Zalira commanded. "We'll show them what true power looks like." The Zalarian dreadnoughts, massive warships bristling with weapons, broke formation and advanced toward the vanguard. These ships were the crown jewels of the Zalarian fleet, larger, heavily armed, and virtually indestructible. It was a strategy designed to end the fight quickly. They were sending their strongest forces in a final push to crush humanity once and for all. Darnell watched as the dreadnoughts came into view. "This is it," he said, his voice calm but filled with the weight of the moment. "We need to outmaneuver them." The vanguard was fast, but the dreadnoughts were nearly twice its size. They moved in unison, their weapons charging, and their shields absorbing every strike. The vanguard would need to be more than just fast. It would need to be precise, using every advantage it had to outwit the larger, more powerful ships. As the dreadnoughts closed in, the vanguard fired off a series of precision shots, aiming for the weak spots on the Zalarian ships. The beams of energy lanced out, striking the dreadnought's engines, causing massive explosions that lit up the darkness of space. The Zalarian ships buckled under the force of the Terran fire, their shields flickering before collapsing entirely. The Empire's mighty dreadnoughts were falling one by one. "We've got them on the ropes." Lieutenant Barnes shouted, "Keep up the pressure, Captain." But just as victory seemed within reach, The Vanguard was rocked by an unexpected hit. A blast from one of the dreadnought's remaining weapon systems struck the Vanguard's starboard side, sending the ship into a violent spin. Sparks flew across the command deck as alarms blared. The ship's systems flickered, but Darnell refused to let the chaos distract him. "Status report," he barked, gripping the console for stability. "We've lost secondary power to the starboard side," Lieutenant Barnes replied, his voice strained. "Hull breach in Sector 9. We're still functional, but we need to make repairs or we'll be sitting ducks." Darnell's mind raced. Can we still fight? We're still in this, Captain Barnes assured him. But it's going to take everything we've got. The Vanguard was damaged, but it wasn't defeated. Humanity's resilience was their greatest weapon, and no amount of firepower could break their will. With a final surge of energy, the Vanguard righted itself and fired its weapons with renewed intensity. The remaining dreadnoughts began to fall, their massive forms twisting in space as they were consumed by the sheer force of the Terran ship's retaliation. The Zalarians, once confident in their inevitable victory, were now retreating. Their mighty fleet had been shattered, their dreadnoughts destroyed, and their morale broken. The Terran Vanguard had proven that, even against impossible odds, humanity could fight back and win. As the battle slowly came to a close, the fleet limped back, broken and defeated. But the message had been sent loud and clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And this was only the beginning. The desperate counterattacked. The echoes of battle reverberated through the vastness of space as the Zalarian fleet, bruised and battered, regrouped. The once mighty empire had been shaken to its core by the unexpected ferocity of the Terran Vanguard. Empress Salira's face remained a mask of cold fury as she watched the remaining fragments of her fleet retreat, struggling to maintain any semblance of order. "How could this happen?" Zalira muttered, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the battle. The Zalarians had always been the apex predators of the galaxy, with no force able to stand against them. Yet here they were on the verge of collapse because of a single human ship. I underestimated them. Beside her, General Corran stood with clenched fists, his eyes narrowed. "They're not like the others, Empress. We've faced dozens of races, but these Terrans, they're different. Their tactics are unpredictable, and their ship is more advanced than anything we've encountered. We need to rethink our strategy." Zalira turned to him, her expression hardening. "Then we will change our strategy. Gather the remaining fleet. Prepare for the final assault. We will wipe them out once and for all." Corran nodded. "As you command, Empress." Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Captain Elias Darnell stood at the command deck, watching the now quiet space around them. The Terran ship had dealt a heavy blow to the Zalarian fleet, but the price had been high. The Vanguard was damaged, its hull scarred by battle, its systems barely holding together. Yet, for all its wounds, the ship remained operational. The Terrans had come a long way from their humble beginnings, and they weren't about to back down now. "We did it," Lieutenant Barnes said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it. We pushed them back." Darnell shook his head. "Not yet. We may have won the battle, but the war isn't over. Zalira won't let this go. We need to be ready." The crew was exhausted, their faces drawn with the weight of the fight. But there was no time to rest. The Zalarians would regroup, and they would come back stronger. Darnell knew it, and he knew that humanity had no choice but to meet them head-on dot. As if on cue, a message from the Zalarian flagship appeared on the communication screen. Zalira's cold, unyielding voice echoed through the ship's command center. "You may have won this round, Terran," she said, her voice laced with venom, "but this fight is far from over. I will personally see to it that your pathetic battleship is reduced to dust. Prepare yourselves, for the Zealarians are coming." The transmission ended abruptly. Darnell's eyes narrowed, and he turned to his crew. "They're not backing down," he said grimly. "Prepare for another fight." As the Vanguard made its way through the void of space, Darnell and his crew braced themselves. They knew that the Zealarians weren't going to let their humiliation go unpunished. The Empire was desperate now, its pride wounded beyond repair. And when an Empire's pride was at stake, they were capable of anything. Back on the Zealarian flagship, Zalira's fury was palpable. Her generals and advisors gathered around her, nervously awaiting her orders. "Prepare the Dreadnought-class warships," she ordered, her voice cold as ice. "We will make sure that this human vessel never sees another star. The Terrans have shown their hand, but they have no idea what we are truly capable of. We have weapons they could never even dream of." General Corran raised an eyebrow. "Empress, if I may, their ship has shown remarkable resilience. It may be wiser too." "No," Zalira snapped. "They've embarrassed me, Corran. They've made a fool of me and my empire. This time, there will be no mercy. Deploy everything." The Zalarian fleet began to form up once again, their dreadnoughts leading the charge. But this time, they were bringing something new to the table, an experimental weapon capable of turning the tide of the war in their favor. The Terrans might have surprised them once, but the Empire would show them the true meaning of power. Darnell watched as the fleet of Zalarian warships advanced, the dreadnoughts towering over the smaller ships. His mind raced as he calculated their options. The Vanguard could hold its own, but against the overwhelming power of the Zalarian dreadnoughts, even the most advanced human technology could be outmatched. "Captain, their dreadnoughts are coming." "Straight for us," Lieutenant Barnes reported, his voice tight with tension. "We don't have the firepower to take them head-on." Darnell's eyes flicked to the holographic map. His crew was tired, the Vanguard was damaged, and they had no choice but to fight. There was no way out now. "We fight smarter," Darnell said, his voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "We'll use their overconfidence against them. We'll lure them into our trap." "Trap, sir?" Barnes asked, confused. Darnell's lips curled into a determined smile. "Yes, a trap. We've already shown them that we can outmaneuver them. Now we'll use their arrogance to our advantage." The Vanguard slowly turned, moving away from the incoming dreadnoughts. The Zalarians, sensing victory, followed. But Darnell had planned for this. The Vanguard wasn't retreating, it was positioning itself for a decisive blow. "We're luring them into the gravitational pull of the nearby asteroid field," Darnell explained to his crew. "Once they're within range, we'll launch everything we've got. Their massive ships won't be able to maneuver fast enough." The tension in the command center was palpable as the Vanguard maneuvered toward the asteroid field. The Zeal were coming closer, their dreadnoughts eager to finish the Terran ship off once and for all. But what they didn't know was that the Vanguard had prepared for this moment. The human ship was quick and nimble, while the Zalarian ships were big and unwieldy. As the two fleets approached the asteroid field, the Vanguard suddenly veered to the side, its engines firing at full power. The Zalarians followed, confident in their numbers. But as they entered the asteroid field, the Vanguard unleashed its full arsenal of weapons, striking the Zalarian ships with deadly precision. The first dreadnought was hit with a direct blast to its main engines, sending it careening into an asteroid, where it exploded in a massive fireball. The remaining dreadnoughts, caught off guard by the human ship's sudden strike, struggled to adjust to the chaotic environment. The Vanguard was relentless, using the asteroids as cover and outmaneuvering the massive Zellarian ships at every turn. The tide of the battle was shifting once again. Humanity's triumph. The space between the two forces seemed to stretch into eternity as the Terran Vanguard drifted among the jagged asteroids, its hull battered but still intact. The Zellarian dreadnoughts loomed large in the distance, their massive forms illuminated by the cold, distant light of nearby stars. Despite the chaos and damage, the Vanguard was still standing, and the human crew had managed to turn the tables in a way no one could have predicted. Captain Elias Darnell stood firm at the command deck, his mind focused despite the noise and disarray around him. His crew worked with unparalleled precision, and every second that passed brought them closer to the final moment of the battle. He couldn't afford to relax, not yet. But there was something in the air, something he couldn't quite put into words. It was a feeling of quiet triumph. "Status update, Lieutenant Barnes," Darnell said without turning round. Barnes, sweat beading on his forehead, looked up from the console. "We've taken out 2 dreadnoughts, Captain. The rest are disoriented. The asteroid field is working in our favor. Our shields are holding, but we can't keep this up forever. We need to finish this now." Darnell nodded. He knew Barnes was right. The Vanguard had bought them time, but time was running out. The Zellarians were beginning to adapt to the environment, and soon they would have their bearings back. The moment for humanity's victory was slipping away. "We're not just here to survive," Darnell said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "We're here to win. Let's end this." With a swift movement, he turned to his tactical officer. "Target the remaining dreadnoughts. Focus all firepower on their engines. We'll use their momentum against them." The order was given, and the Vanguard sprang into action. The crew's coordination was flawless, each command, each maneuver executed with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The Vanguard surged forward, its weapons locking onto the remaining Zellarian ships. With a series of devastating shots, the first of the dreadnoughts was struck. Its engines flared, and with a brilliant flash, it disintegrated into space debris. The remaining Zellarian ships, now down to half their original strength, turned to face the Vanguard, but it was already too late. The Terran ship had gained the upper hand. The once confident Empire's fleet was faltering, their movements sluggish and disjointed. The Terran crew could feel it. The tide of the battle had shifted. There was no turning back now. On the Zellarian flagship, Empress Saliera was losing control. Her once unshakable composure had been shattered, and her eyes burned with frustration. She could not fathom how a single Terran ship had managed to hold its own against her superior forces. The humiliation was unbearable. How is this possible? She demanded of her advisors. How are they still standing? General Corran, though no less proud than the Empress, was beginning to lose his confidence as well. "They're relentless, Empress. They've adapted in ways we didn't anticipate. The Vanguard is more than just a ship, it's a symbol. We underestimated the Terrans, and now they're making us pay for it." Zellira's fury rose to a boiling point. "No, I will not let this stand. We will finish them now. Launch the Omega strikes, now." Her command was final. The Omega strikes, a powerful weapon designed to obliterate anything in its path, would be the Empire's last-ditch effort to win. The Zelarian dreadnoughts began to charge their massive cannons, preparing to unleash their devastating payload. Meanwhile, Captain Darnell had already anticipated this move. He knew the Zelarians would go to any lengths to ensure victory, and the Omega strikes were their most deadly weapon. But the Vanguard was ready. Lieutenant Barnes, prepare countermeasures, Darnell ordered. Activate the pulse shields, and reroute energy to the secondary systems. We need to hold them off long enough to land the final blow. Understood, Captain, Barnes replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. Pulse shields online. We've got this, Captain. The Vanguard glowed with a faint blue energy as the pulse shields activated, their shimmering barrier encasing the ship in a protective shield. The Zalarian fleet launched their Omega strikes, massive beams of destructive energy cutting through. The vacuum of space, the shock waves hit the Vanguard, rattling its hull, but the pulse shields held strong. The force was immense, but humanity's engineering was just as advanced. This is it, Darnell said, eyes narrowed with focus. All or nothing. He pushed the button that would send the Vanguard into a full offensive. The ship's weapons, systems fired everything they had, all aimed at the weakened Zalarian ships. With one final, explosive strike, the last of the Zalarian dreadnoughts was destroyed, its massive frame crumbling into space dust. Victory, it was sudden, it was overwhelming. The Zalarian fleet, once the most feared in the galaxy, was no more as the final explosions faded into the blackness of space. Darnell stood at the command deck, his heart still pounding. They had won. Against all odds, humanity had triumphed. He turned to his crew. We did it, he said, his voice filled with pride. The crew erupted in cheers. The Vanguard had done what no one had believed possible. Humanity had defeated the Zalarian Empire, and with it, they had changed the course of history. But as Darnell stood there, watching the stars outside the command deck, he knew that this victory was only the beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and they wouldn't stop until they had claimed their rightful place among the stars. The Empire's collapse. Silence that followed the final strike was almost as deafening as the chaos of battle. The Vanguard stood, its hull scorched and battered, but victorious. The remnants of the Zalarian fleet had scattered, defeated and in full retreat. The once feared dreadnoughts, those titanic symbols of Zalarian supremacy, were now little more than floating debris. On board the Vanguard, a collective sense of disbelief washed over the crew. The unimaginable had just occurred. Humanity had toppled one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The crew had fought with every ounce of energy they had, and now they stood as the undeniable victors. But amidst the triumph, a lingering question hung in the air. What would come next? Captain Darnell surveyed the damage to his ship, his hand resting on the console in front of him. We did it, but we're far from safe, he muttered to himself. The Empire is broken, but its influence will still linger. Lieutenant Barnes approached Darnell, his face a mix of pride and concern. Captain, the fleet is in disarray, but we've barely touched the surface. We may have shattered their military, but we'll need more to truly end their reign. We don't know what their government is planning. Darnell nodded grimly. The Empire might be collapsing, but the Zalarians are not easily defeated. They will regroup, they will rebrand, but we've shown them one undeniable truth: they are not invincible. As if on cue, the CUM system crackled to life, the voice of Empress Saliera cutting through the static. You've broken my fleet. Terran, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. But you have not broken the Empire. You have not broken me. You will regret this. Darnell's lips twisted into a determined smile. You may have the power, Zalira, but you've lost the trust of your people. They've seen what humanity can do, and they'll never forget it. Zalira's image flickered on the screen, her expression one of absolute fury. Her once pristine appearance was marred by the battle's toll, her arrogance replaced by raw desperation. You've turned my fleet into dust. My pride has been shattered, but I will rise again. This is not the end. You have only won a battle, Terran, but the war is far from over. Before Darnell could respond, the transmission cut off abruptly. The quiet that followed was eerie. The crew of the Vanguard knew they had dealt a devastating blow to the Zalarians, but they also knew Zalira's pride would drive her to do anything to reclaim her empire. We have to be ready for the next wave, Darnell said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. The Zalarians will not give up. They will regroup, and they'll come for us again. But we'll be ready. While the Empire's military might had been shattered, the true battle was far from over. The fall of the Zalarian fleet had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Longer would the Empire's power be seen as absolute. Humanity had proven that even the most seemingly invincible force could be overcome across the galaxy. The reaction to the Terran victory was swift and profound. The news of the Empire's defeat spread like wildfire, reaching the farthest corners of the universe. Systems that had once bowed to the Zalarian Empire now began to reconsider their loyalties. Many planets, long oppressed by the Empire, saw an opportunity for freedom. The balance of power was shifting, and humanity was at the center of it. On the Zalarian homeworld, the mood was one of shock and devastation. The once proud leaders, who had been accustomed to ruling with an iron fist, now found themselves scrambling to maintain control. Zalira's words echoed through the halls of the Empire's capital. We will rise again. But the cracks were showing. The Zalarian people, long accustomed to the Empire's unrelenting control, were now questioning their future. If a single Terran battleship could bring them to their knees, what did that say about the Empire's strength? Whispers of rebellion began to stir within the Empire's own ranks. In the halls of the Imperial Palace, Zalira convened with her advisors, but the confidence she had once exuded had vanished. Her empire was crumbling, and she knew it. The Terran Vanguard had delivered a message that reverberated not just through the battlefield, but through every corner of the Zalarian Empire. This war isn't over, Zalira declared, her voice tinged with frustration and uncertainty. But we will not be defeated by these Terrans. We will rebuild. We will strike back. But even as Zalira spoke with the remnants of her empire's power, a new reality was taking shape. The empire that had once crushed civilizations without a second thought was now fighting for its survival. The galaxy would never be the same again as the Vanguard drifted in the void. Its crew, exhausted but resolute, Captain Darnell reflected on the events that had just transpired. The victory had been hard won, but it was only the first chapter of a much larger story. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. And as the embers of the Zalarian Empire's pride began to burn out, new alliances began to form. A new power was rising, one that would stand shoulder to shoulder with humanity in the coming days. But one thing was certain: the Zalarians would not surrender easily, and the galaxy would soon learn that the fight for supremacy was far from over. The new dawn. The aftermath of the battle was felt across the galaxy. The Vanguard hovered in the vastness of space, its crew bruised but resolute, surrounded by the debris of the once mighty Zellerian fleet. The shattered remains of the dreadnoughts and warships floated like reminders of the Empire's lost supremacy. Humanity had delivered a blow that would echo through the ages, and yet the crew knew that victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. Captain Elias Darnell stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the debris scattered across space. The stars twinkled in the distance, peaceful, indifferent. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what they had achieved. The Zellerians, an empire that had crushed countless civilizations with ease, were now on the brink of collapse. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated him. But even as he allowed himself a moment of triumph, a lingering unease gnawed at him. The war was far from over. The Terrans had won the battle, but the Zellerian Empire had not yet surrendered. Zalira's defiance still loomed over the galaxy like a storm cloud. She wouldn't simply give up. She would rise again, and when she did, she would come with all the fury of a wounded empire. "Captain, the Council has assembled," Barnes said, his voice cutting through Darnell's thoughts. "It's time." Darnell turned and nodded. "Let's go." The Terran fleet, though battered, was preparing for its next steps. Humanity's victory had inspired planets across the galaxy, many of which had been crushed under Zellerian rule for centuries. Now, these oppressed worlds were beginning to rally, seeking alliances and freedom. Humanity had proven it could stand against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known, and now they were ready to lead a new era. In the war room of the Vanguard, a dozen leaders sat at a long table. The representatives from various Terran colonies, as well as newly allied planets, looked to Darnell for direction. Each face was weary, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. They had seen what humanity was capable of, but the future remained uncertain. "We've broken their fleet, but we've only just begun to see the true strength of the Empire," Darnell said, standing at the head of the table. "Zaliera will not stop. She will rebuild, and she will try to reclaim what she's lost. But we have something she doesn't: unity." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The Terrans, once seen as underdogs, now stood at the forefront of a galactic movement. The fall of the Zellerian fleet was not just a military victory, was a symbol of defiance, of resistance, of the ability to rise against the greatest of odds. One of the representatives, a fierce and sharp-minded woman named Elira, stood and addressed the room. "Captain Darnell is right. Zaliera will not let us off this easily. But the empires that once cowered before her have seen our strength. They know now that we are capable of changing the tide. They will rally to us." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Darnell's eyes met hers, and he nodded. "We can't stop now. We need to build an alliance, one that will be stronger than the Zellerian Empire ever was. A coalition of free worlds, led by humanity. It's our turn to lead the galaxy." The assembly went on late into the night, strategizing and forming alliances. They discussed the future of the Galaxy One, whether power would shift from oppressive empires to the hands of those who valued freedom and unity. The Terrans had made their mark, and now the universe was watching. Meanwhile, on the Zellerian homeworld, Empress Zalira sat in her grand palace, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The walls of her empire were crumbling, but she was far from finished. She had witnessed the destruction of her fleet, the humiliation of her command. But she had also seen something else, the spark of defiance in the hearts of those she had once ruled. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could challenge her, but they had no idea what they were truly up against. Her advisors stood in the shadows, awaiting her command. She was quiet, her mind turning over the crushing defeat. But despite the failure, her resolve had only grown stronger. The galaxy had underestimated her for the last time. Empress, the situation is dire, one of her generals ventured cautiously. The remaining fleet is in disarray. The galaxy is turning against us. Zalira slowly turned to face him, her eyes burning with fury. They think they've won, but they have no idea what I'm capable of. I will not allow them to dictate the future of the galaxy. We will rebuild. We will reclaim what's ours. The Terrans have made a grave mistake. I'll make sure they pay for it. The general bowed, though he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. He knew better than anyone that Zalira was not a ruler who could be easily defeated. She was as ruthless as she was brilliant, and her plans were far from over. Back on the Vanguard, Darnell stood at the command center, staring out into the vastness of space. The alliance they had built was strong, but there was no mistaking the enormity of the task ahead. Zalira wouldn't give up, but neither would humanity. The road ahead will be difficult, Darnell said to his crew, but we've shown the galaxy that humanity can stand up to any threat, and we're not backing down. Not now, not ever. As the Vanguard sailed through the stars, the crew knew that this was not the end of their journey, it was only the beginning. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity had proven that it could not only survive but thrive. And as long as they had each other, they would continue to fight for the freedom of the galaxy.